As I'm uploading this video, 4.0 is about 12 hours away, and today I'm here for the should you or should you not summon for the rerun characters, being Evernight, Hysilens, and Black Swan. In this video, we're going to be going over each character, talking about what they do and kind of their place over the meta since their release, and talking about how they hold up in their respective teams, and then reasons why you should or should not summon for them. Going in order, starting it off with the GOAT, Evernight. Evernight was a very strong release and to this day holds up as a insanely strong DPS, both in her role as a sub DPS for Castress and even as a main DPS. She was released with the intention of just being on the Remembrance team, and of course that is practically the strongest team in the game right now. She's able to supply good damage herself. Of course, she also drains her own HP, is able to detonate a Memo Sprite to generate more new blood for Castress. So generating new blood for Castress while also doing good damage herself also did have the ability to buff/debuff by making enemies take more damage when she was in the Darkest Riddle state. On top of that, she is able to increase the crit damage of allied Memo Sprites, so every Memo Sprite on the team gets a significant damage increase. To top it all off, she is relatively easy to build as you don't really need to focus on any speed unless you're doing certain setups, and she also gives herself a significant 35% increase to crit rate, so building her at the same time was very easy. There's not really much bad to talk about Evernight. Her in her role as a sub DPS and main DPS holds up really good, and to top it all off, all her vertical investment options for earlier on are all insane. E1 is a significant damage increase which solves Evernight's only problem and also the Remembrance team's only overall problem, which now makes it to where when she is on the field, for every less enemy on the field, so 4/3/2/1, ally Memo Sprites will deal damage based off original damage, which scales higher at 120%/125/130/150%. The literal only problem Evernight has, which is the same thing someone like Castress and Cyrene and like any one of them have, is single target damage, as they are mainly focused big AoE characters. While some of them do have ways to deal with it, like Castress Explosion is fully bounce, Evernight's attacks are all fully AoE. So when she does her detonates for the Memo Sprite, the only problem was when it was single target, the damage is not going to be as good as it can be. It's still solid and generally workable, but E1 is the solution to her really only problem. With her E1, she no longer struggles with single target and can be used in every content in the game pretty much, also with really any matchup. And then the other vertical investment early option being her Light Cone is also great for her own personal damage and also still does buff the team a bit, providing her a damage increase, providing her a max HP increase, and also making ally Memo Sprites ignore 20% of defense when dealing damage, and also provides energy for Evernight herself. So she really just has all around good investment. And then even if you look a little past that with E2, E2 is a absolute game changer. Evernight's damage skyrockets to an oblivious amount. As a main DPS, she will just always be cooking. As a sub DPS, she will always be cooking. 40% free crit damage for both her and her Memo Sprite, extra 2 Memoria anytime you gain a Memoria stack, and also 2 charges for the Darkest Riddle state, which really lets her be in Darkest Riddle permanently. Pre-E2, there are times where you will not be in Darkest Riddle state, but it's not something that is super significant, especially even as a hyper carry, because usually there's ways like RMC Action Advance that can allow you to generate more energy as you get to attack more, so you can effectively gain more energy to get it back. But at E2, that is no longer a problem. You are always going to be in Darkest Riddle after the first ultimate, and you will constantly be dealing insane amount of damage. Then at any level, the biggest thing about her is she is infinite stacking with the Memoria. The more you get hit, the more your HP drains, the more someone else on the team drains your HP, the more Memoria stacks up, the more damage you do deal, with no limit in sight. So Evernight, in her role as a sub DPS for Castress, as a main DPS, she is just so strong and still super strong to this day. Next up is Hysilens. So Hysilens to this day holds up very well in her role. Her alongside the buff Kafka were the revival of Dot, really just being the cornerstone, and even to this day are the cornerstone. The investment for Dot in getting into the team always goes having Kafka and then getting Hysilens, as what Hysilens provides for the team is just too valuable. On top of all her debuffs being really good by having the ability to make enemies take more damage, make enemies do less damage to you, and also decrease enemies defense by 25% for just having her zone up, which is practically always. It's the main thing with her talent, where she is able to inflict any kind of dot state when anyone on the team attacks an enemy target. Previously, when it was just Kafka and Black Swan, you were really only able to inflict shock and wind shear, and then Black Swan had her Arcana shenanigans, but that was it, so the team was naturally restricted. You had to run a third dot character that usually would only do burn, that would usually only do bleed, and so on and so forth. Hysilens effectively solved that issue entirely into one character, where she is now able to inflict every single dot state by just attacking with anyone on the team. So your sustain can attack, apply a dot. Kafka can attack, detonate the dot, and apply more. Hysilens herself attacks, applies dot. Anyone else attacks, applies dot. Hysilens also not necessarily needing to use skill often is very good for the team, so Kafka can freely spam her skill, and potentially if you had the third slot being another character that might want to use skill sometimes, it definitely did help. And on top of that, thanks to one of her bonus traces, she is able to recover a skill point anytime she deploys a zone, and you also go into the battle with a zone deployed by her ultimate, so that's an insanely good start. To top it all off, Hysilens' ultimate with a bonus trace is able to proc all dots applied on enemies to 150% of the original damage. So not only is she able to apply every dot type, able to have really good debuffs for the team, have a permanent ult usage, and also be relatively skill point positive, she's also now able to proc the dots onto the enemies that they currently have, allowing you to get a lot more sources on your turn and not just wait for the enemies. So alongside Kafka, who's able to proc a lot of dots, Hysilens' ultimate is able to as well. And really, to now, she holds up really strong and is a permanent slot on the team, at least until someone comes and does a role better, which probably won't be for a very long time. Her vertical investments are also really good, especially her E1, which is just such an insane dupe for that team. Just Hysilens existing now will make every dot do 116% of their original value, which alone is already really good. But if you thought that wasn't enough, now she is able to inflict an additional instance of a dot when her talent is applied. So when someone attacks, instead of applying one dot, they are able to apply 2 dots. So you really get double the dot output and also an increase to the original values. It's a significant damage increase and a significant output increase all into one dupe. Having that dupe and not having that dupe is very noticeable. Already not having the dupe and just having Hysilens alone is a great increase, but really having that E1 is where you really feel the team become God. Her Lycone is also relatively good, providing effect hit rate to make her requirements easier, increasing the dot damage that enemies receive up to 30%, and also able to increase attacker speed by 10%. Of course, the dot vulnerability is going to be good on that team, as that's going to be the entire source of damage. Effect hit rate, as I mentioned, makes her easier to build, and the speed increase, that does depend on the character. Assuming the new best team with dot being Hysilens, Kafka, Black Swan, and then sustain, or sustainless depending on what you're doing. The speed buff mainly would be important if you're hitting a breakpoint on Black Swan or Hysilens, but mainly would be something you focus on Kafka, who's really the only one that is built with a lot of speed, and then also your sustain potentially. Black Swan, the best way to build her is not really building her with speed. Hysilens, you don't really necessarily have to build her with speed either, but she's really easy to get higher speeds even without speed boots. So potentially that speed percent buff can actually help you hit a higher breakpoint while still maintaining your attack boots build. But overall, her Lycone is still a really good option on that team. So having good vertical investment and also just an insane base kit is the reason she is a part of the cornerstone of Dot. Kafka is of course the real cornerstone, just because Dot doesn't really work without her. But Hysilens, with how she's able to apply every dot, is also generally a cornerstone consideration, making her to this day insanely valuable. And finally, Black Swan. So Black Swan released all the way back in 2.0. She was with the Kafka and Swan team mainly. That team didn't really last for too long. As we went further into the game, the dot problems did get exposed. Waiting for enemy turns got really bad. Kafka's kit was relatively outdated for the 2.x later era, and then especially the entirety of the beginning of 3.x, at least until she got buffed. Because there was not many forms of dot, waiting for enemies was just generally bad, because by the time you wait for enemies to act, you could just kill with a hyper carry or just any other team. And what Black Swan did, her Arcana stacks was great, but you were never able to really fully utilize it too much. Her defense shred was good, but the fact you always had to skill those 3 turns made the team very hard to really manage with skill points, especially since there was not much form of skill point generation back then. And so overall, with Dot falling off, Black Swan naturally did as well, and then once Dot finally came back, Black Swan was relatively outdated. While you still used her as a third Dot option if you wanted to run the team, it was generally better overall to just run another support or debuffer, such as Cypher, Silverwolf, Ruanmei, or Robin in that Saw alongside the sustain for a overall better outcome. And even if you wanted to, you could just run Cyrene there instead. Black Swan relatively wasn't an option you'd want to use, and only would really be used if you were someone that just really wanted to utilize her and you just really liked her. That was really the only case. That, however, is no longer true, because in the 4.0 update, Black Swan is getting a buff, which completely changed how good she is. She went from being very whatever, the most replaceable option on the team if you're considering it, to really wants to be on the team. She's not a cornerstone as Hysilens and Kafka especially per se, but she is such an insane damage increase with her on the team. The best team is now that triple dot and then sustain or other support slash debuffer if sustainless, as now her output of damage is great. She no longer has to only skill to get that defense shred, she's able to just apply it to the people that do have Arcana. Arcana is also now considered every dot state as well, Her Arcana also has 20% defense ignore. Damage overall of it was increased as well. Generation of Arcana was also increased as well, and the half stacks was much easier to manage, so you can have a lot more uptime on Arcana in general. Okay, I mentioned having Arcana would give you the defense shred. That's not actually true. What I meant to say was attacking with basic attack or ultimate has the same defense reduction effect from the skill thanks to her A4. And Arcana actually is able to apply it, but the other way is more consistent. So technically I'm not wrong, but you get the gist. She doesn't have to use skill only anymore to apply her defense shred. She is able to practically permanently keep it up without using it. Top it all off, she is now also able to increase damage dealt by all allies based off her effect hit rate up to 72%, which is a very, very big increase. So not only is she doing significantly more damage, she's also supporting the team with more damage dealt and providing defense shred, which also kind of comes in the form of amp overall. It's really safe to assume that Black Swan is back. The best team is now the 3 Hysilens, Black Swan, and Kafka. And then last slot, I already went over it. For her vertical investment as well, her E1 is actually still really powerful. It wasn't changed because it was always good. It's just you weren't really able to get the full effect of it. But now, as Hysilens is able to inflict every dot, Arcana is inflicted to all dot. You really just lower the enemy's res by 25%. To all those elements, so it's just a great damage increase. On the flip side, her S1 is of course the same, providing effect hit rate to make her easier to build, providing attack and also defense ignore based off profit stacks, which can provide you up to a 28.8% defense ignore and also 20% attack. Before, it was better if you just ran a different Lycon on her, but now with this Lycon you can actually overcap easily with a defense shred, the extra attack, and it's just a big damage increase. It's actually overall her best in slot again, and she's also able to fully utilize the profit stacks by gaining all of them because Arcana is considered every dot state. So you are not required to run another debuffer or more debuffs on the team to get the full stacks, so making it inconsistent. Now it's fully sustainable by just having her herself apply the debuffs. But mainly looking at her base kit, her buff state is just so good, making her another character that is back on that team. Now for reasons why you should or should not summon, starting with Evernight. For sub DPS specifically, if you use Castress, you don't have Evernight, I 100% recommend Evernight. Evernight is going to be a significant difference in that team. Even at Ether S0, Evernight is on that team. She helps you bring that team to like the best slot of a team that you could have. She is of course a part of that, and she is one of the reasons that it is that good. She provides a lot for sub DPS, again, new build generation for Castress, good damage output from herself even at lower investment, and then of course the buffing of crit damage of Memo Sprites and also making enemies take more damage. Very loaded kit overall for a sub DPS. So if you use her at all, then you definitely want to pick up Evernight. And then if you want to invest into her main DPS, that would require to at least have 2 other characters that do benefit her in a best in slot format. There's quite a few difference in variety. Evernight is not as reliant on Hysilens as Castress, so you can actually get by without Hysilens, but you definitely want to have a combination of at least 2 Memo Sprites because you want to have more Memo Sprites to have the team function best. So having Hysilens is still going to be one of the best differences. Having Cyrene is going to be great. Having RMC on the team is going to be great, but you can sub out a lot more as opposed to Castress. You can run Cypher on the team better. You can run someone like Ramon May on the team better just to fill for that last slot you don't have. As I mentioned, you can sub out Hysilens for someone else as she can utilize other sustains better than Castress because they don't need to generate as much new bud. Since Evernight is not generating new bud, she's just generating Memoria stacks. So the HP drain is still good, but it's not as game changing as generating new bud for Castress. So as a main DPS, if you do have some of those units available, she is definitely a very good option to pick up. Reasons to not summon would obviously be the opposites. If you don't have Castress and you don't really want to run her as a main DPS either, then you wouldn't have a reason to pull her. If you already have enough DPS going, you don't want to pull Castress for that team, you don't want to have a main DPS Evernight, or you just don't really have many Remembrance characters sitting around for that team, then you don't really have a reason to summon, would you? It's really that simple. And then for Hysilens, reasons why you should summon is if you plan on getting into dot. This whole update allows you to really get the entire team. You're able to pick Kafka for free. That's a cornerstone. You're able to pull Hysilens. That's the other cornerstone. You don't even have to pull Black Swan. If you want the best results, obviously you would pull her, but you can honestly just put a debuffer or buffer in that case and then sustain. The whole real thing is if you are wanting to get into dot and you do have Kafka available or you're willing to get her, then you want to pick up Hysilens, as that is the cornerstone. That is the real only reasons. You can imagine what the reasons of why you shouldn't summon is if you don't want to pull Kafka and you just don't want to get into dot. That would of course be the only reasons. I'm sure you're probably asking, like, can't I just run her as like a general debuffer or like the funny dot teams like you've seen me run in the background? No, it is not worth it. The only reason someone like me can do a lot of that is because of higher investment and certain synergies to figure it out. You would need to have a good amount of investment to actually make that look like it's doing good. You're much better off investing into someone else that actually she is a debuffer that could do better in that role, such as Cypher. So really, the only reason would be to pull her if you are wanting to get into Dot, you have Kafka available, or you will get her. And then to not is if you just don't have Kafka, you don't plan on getting her, then obviously don't pull her. And then finally for Black Swan. Black Swan is still, even though really strong now, she is still the third priority of the Dot team. Ensure if you want to pull her, you already have Kafka and Hysilens available, or you will be getting them this update. Once you do, then feel free to summon for Black Swan for the best Dot team you can have. The other two are just more priority. The whole start of it is having Kafka, then having Hysilens, then having Black Swan. So if you want to get into Dot, you are able to do that format, or you already have it available, such as already having Kafka and Hysilens, or maybe just having Kafka already, then you can pull for Black Swan. In any case, if you are able to get the trio, and you want to, then of course Black Swan is going to be a great pickup. Reasons to not is same thing with Hysilens, but you know, less urgent because Hysilens is one of the considered cornerstones, is if you already have a Dot team, maybe it's already functioning completely well for you and you'd rather just invest more into the team otherwise. I mean, it'd be on one side to get Black Swan for best output, as that is again the best team, but if you just don't want to for whatever reason, of course you don't have to. The team still functions really well on the existing teams before Black Swan came back. Or if again you have no instance in wanting to get into Dot, maybe you just like Black Swan. If you just like Black Swan, you want to pick her up as a debuffer, I don't recommend it. You're again better picking up someone else who's actually made for that role, such as Cypher or Silverwolf. Not generally recommended to pick up Black Swan to use it outside of Dot teams. So if you have the Dot team available and you want to upgrade it more, of course, pick up Black Swan if you can, and that would be the green light to summon. If you don't want to invest into the Dot team, or you just don't want to get something like Kafka, or if you just don't want to pick up Black Swan specifically for that team, the team will still be fine without her, so in that case, feel free to skip. Just do note, if you are having the team and you don't want to pick up Black Swan specifically, you're not going to have the best team ever because Black Swan is on the best team by a very good margin compared to anything else. And that is the should you or should you not summon for the rerun banners. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of stock content, and I'll see you later. Peace out.